approach that problem optimistically, your mind is 30% more active. 30%. Pessimism literally shuts your mind off. So that as you get angry and twisted and frustrated, it is killing your creativity.
This episode is brought to you by the best-selling book, Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, How to Turn Your Independent Film into a Money-Making Business. Learn more at filmbizbook.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Jason Satterlund. How you doing, Jason?
I am fantastic.
Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for coming on the show, brother. I appreciate it, man. I've been a fan from a distance for a little while, man. And I'm glad you reached out, dude. I saw Kenobi a while ago because I'm a Star Wars geek. If many of you before my show, I used to have a life-size Yoda that sits in the back behind me. But now Yoda sits over here, right there. He's right there, and
right off the camera.
And there's never too much. There's always a Yoda somewhere in my life at one point or another. So I am, as they say, a full blown Star Wars geek. Nice. So anytime those kind of really high quality fan films comes out, I always I'm interested. And yours was one of the best I've ever seen. But we're gonna get into Kenobi in a bit. But first questions, dudes. Why, God's green earth, would you want to be in be a filmmaker? Insane business, sir. Insane,
wonderful. You know what? I love this industry. I love it. I love telling stories. I've always loved it ever since I was a kid. And I think, my story is probably similar to a lot of people where I saw that one movie as a child, and for me, it was Close Encounters. When I saw those UFOs, the police chasing UFOs down the freeway, I was so hooked. And from that moment forward, when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to watch movies. I grew up in a very conservative Christian household where movies are bad and Hollywood is the lion's den and don't go there, you lose your soul. My mom still says that. Anyway, the magic of Spielberg really captured me as a child. And I would get to see the movie like once and I couldn't go back and see it again. I would imagine it in my room. I'd just go in and play the movie over and over in my head. And I just desperately wanted to be a part of that industry. Storytelling is just to see the awe on an actor's face, when the camera pushes in and I couldn't, I was a dog with a bone. I could not stop until I got there.
Is there a filmmaker in modern history or in history of film at all that has inspired more filmmakers than Steven Spielberg?
Right.
I mean, I'm literally is there, because you think back, Kubrick, of course, and Kurosawa, and then you could start, Lean and all that stuff, but none of them were as popular and as big as Spielberg. I mean, he is, when you think directing, Spielberg's the name for our generation, absolutely, without question, is the name that pops up. And I have no idea how many people have been on this show.
It's amazing.
That have been inspired by Spielberg or mentioned a Spielberg movie that inspired them to become a filmmaker or had the chance to work with them. And had a chance to and tell me the stories of how they these insane stories of Spielberg, coming in and working with them. And I've said this on the show so many times, he has touched so many filmmakers personally, literally made a phone call, sent a letter, opened a door, gave an opportunity to hundreds, if not thousands of filmmakers, let alone people from behind the scenes as well over the course of his career. I don't think there's been a more influential filmmaker in the history of cinema. That's just my opinion.
I think you're right. I mean, the amount of people that I know, the amount of people I have met that were just inspired to do movies because of Jurassic Park. That was the one that
generational.
I want to make that.
Yeah. Close Encounters, Jaws, E.T. For me, it was E.T. I saw E.T. for the first time. I was like, what?
Raiders. Raiders. Who didn't watch Raiders and went, I want to make one of those like that. So that was 100% me as a kid. Probably everyone listening is, has that film that pops into their brain, more than likely a Spielberg film, but I had to had to get into it. And it was very difficult for me to get into it because I didn't know anybody, but that magic that's created. And I think the reason why he inspires so much is because, especially early Spielberg, the golden age of Spielberg, Jaws, E.T.,
70s, 80s,
Raiders, Last Crusade, Jurassic Park, like there is a charm to his films that is very rare. You don't see it very often. And you can create that to have the opportunity to actually build something that feels like that. Oh my gosh. It's just,
no, it's insane. I hope to have him on the show one day. He is on my bucket list. I'm putting it out into the universe. Everyone listening, take a second right now, put it out, get Spielberg on the show, on Alex's show. And I will ask him the questions you guys want me to ask him.
I don't know him, but I'll make some calls.
If anyone out there, if you're listening, you never know. Who knows? Yeah. Maybe Steven's listening. I don't know.
He very well might be.
Wouldn't that be insane? Mm-hmm. So look, as a director, I mean, I feel like you and I are of similar vintage. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We've walked across the same, battlefields and over the same. We have the shrapnel to prove it. What happens as a director when no one gives you the opportunity to direct? Because unlike a writer, you can write, but a director, you need an opportunity. You need to do so many things to practice your art. So what do you do?
Yeah, that's it's a great question. And I don't know how much time we have, but I could talk about this a lot because it is the one job that's the hardest to get. It's far harder to get a directing job than an acting job because there's just fewer of them, When you look on any filmmaking website, whether it's Mandy or, where you look for jobs, rarely do you see director needed. It's always crew. Right. And that's just sort of the nature of the beast because the director is generally the one creating the project. And you're in a position where all other departments, right? So from producers, DPs, ADs, makeup, all of them get hired by directors or producers. That means, and so you're working with your friends, but directors get hired by usually clients or studios. So it's a different whole universe that you have to be connected to. So it's extremely difficult to land directing jobs. And it was very, very difficult for me. And it was a real source of depression, anxiety, frustration for many, many years. I grew up in Portland, Oregon. I lived in Nashville, moved to Nashville when I was in my 20s to pursue filmmaking. I don't know why I didn't go to LA. Probably because I don't know why, because my mom told me it was dangerous there. So I think that's why actually I was too afraid. So I went to Nashville and could not get, I wanted to be a director, but who was I? I didn't know anything. I didn't know anyone. And I ended up in doing music videos because Nashville's Music City. Right. So worked in music videos as a PA and all sorts of different jobs. And I ended up in corporate work. And, when you're in corporate work, you're shooting an instructional video or a live event. And I would do hours of this stuff. And still, it's not directing, right? It's not, I might maybe get a chance to do a little short. But the biggest opportunity I got is I wrote a script called Searching for Winter. And I met a business guy because, that's what you need. You need the business guy to help you get some money to get your film made, right? Mm-hmm. So I make the script. This business guy liked the script and he said, I'll help you raise the money. So he gave me a little bit of money and we shot a little trailer for it. And I was so excited. And the trailer, it came out pretty well, considering it's however long ago it was. And nobody wanted to touch it. Everybody looked at it and went yeah, that's cool. But you've never made a movie before. So how am I supposed to know that you can actually make a movie? And that was really devastating because I could show them all the commercials I'd done and music videos. Look at this. Isn't this cool? Yeah, but it's not a movie. So, and that was really disheartening for me. And I kicked around for a long, long time. And finally I realized one day, well, okay, if no one's going to give me the opportunity, I have to make it. So I sat down and wrote a script around the assets that I had access to, things that I knew I could do. I knew how to shoot underwater. And I knew I knew a stunt guy, and, I knew I had some friends in the industry. So I wrote a script kind of using some of those assets. I set out to raise $40,000. I raised 12.
Hey,
that's how much I suck at raising money. So I'm
going to stop you there right there, sir. You raised $12,000 for a movie. That's a freaking win, my friend. I'm sorry.
It was a win.
Just because you went for 40 and only got 12, you got over 25% of your budget as a filmmaker. Right. Come on, dude.
Yeah, it was. It's funny because this film, it's probably the most proudest accomplishments I've ever done in my life, because I had no help, really. The actors didn't really want to be in it. The DP was a really close friend of mine. I kid you not, his first comment when I said, I'm just going to make a movie, I just want to make one, his first comment to me, he was like my best friend. He's like, I just don't want to make any more crappy movies. I'm like, oh, thanks, dude. Wow. Thanks. I appreciate that. So I DP'd it myself. So I had 3 film interns, two Full Sail graduates, and one guy who just, Full Sail.
Yeah, Full Sail.
And one guy who just wanted to be in the movie business. They were basically my crew. I had this stunt guy friend of mine and his wife, and that was it. And I shot for 6 straight weeks over Christmas and shot this thing. We had 2 underwater sequences. We did mob scenes. We had car chases and all kinds of crazy stuff. And I actually put myself in the hospital from exhaustion. I ended up passing out at one point, and from I think a panic attack is probably what it was.
Yeah, I've had those. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I did it. I got it across the line, and it really changed a lot for me. Essentially, going back to your initial question, how do you get hired? I just had to invent it myself. I just had to go out and make it happen. And I did. Now, the film never went anywhere, but I at least was able to plant that flag. And I do think that doing the first one helped kind of unlock the dam for future things. Because now I'm a feature film director. I can say that, and no one can take that from me. You might watch the film and say it sucks, but you can't take the fact that I made a movie, and it was a real source of pride.
I'll tell you what, man, it's exactly what happened to me. It took me years before I had the courage to actually go make a film. I had the skill set probably 20 years prior, 15 years prior, but it took me a while before I jumped on that board. And the second I did it, it just opened up the door. Like, oh, okay, I proved it to myself. I proved it to myself that I could tell a story that looked decent. I shot it myself, shot it in 8 days. It was a small little film, but we sold it to Hulu. And nice. We sold it internationally and had a really great cast, and it was done in LA, and we, pulled a bunch of friends together and we made it happen. But you had to kind of go out there and just do it. And I think it's also the idea, and I've said this on the show many times, about this lottery ticket mentality that we have as filmmakers, going like, if it's going to be our first feature, it has to be Reservoir Dogs, or it has to be Jaws, or it has to be, whatever, Memento, or whatever that film is, that's going to blow us up as a director. And that's generally not, it doesn't happen for most directors.
Well, there's a reason for that. I think that every filmmaking book that you read, we've all read Rebel Without a Crew and Kevin Smith's book. I forget the title offhand, but like all those, when they talk about the story of their life, we are kind of sold the dream that we will be cherry picked from obscurity and placed on high into the upper echelon of work. And most books are written kind of from that framework. Most how-to books about movie making are built like that. Like you're going to make, I saw an interview with the Duplass brothers, and they basically laid out just like that. You make your first movie, it's going to get into Sundance or some big festival. From there, you're going to get a bigger actor interested in your film. From there, you're going to get the bigger film. Yeah, but what if your first film doesn't get into Sundance? What if it doesn't? What if the only festival it gets into is the Cedar Rapids Film Festival in Iowa? And then that's it. Like, how do you then function? So we're all hanging on to the dream that we are that special person that will get cherry picked. And it's not impossible. It still happens. Like it does happen, which is part of the allure. But 90% of us, that doesn't happen to. It's this
99.9% of us,
right.
It doesn't happen to. I call it the lottery ticket mentality. Do people win the lottery every day? Absolutely. The bulk of the people who play the lottery don't win. And that is the mentality that we're stuck with. I agree with you 110%. And by the way, that Duplass example, they shot a movie for $3, which was a DV tape called, I forgot, something about an answering machine. Dude, that guy was destined. Those guys were destined. Just like you look at those stories, and I've studied all of them, and I've had some of those filmmakers on the show, and I asked them the questions like, it just kind of worked out. Like they had no indication that a movie about a guy leaving a message on an answering machine for an ex-girlfriend shot horribly. To their own, they've said it. It shot horribly, but got into Sundance, and then that kind of led into all these other dominoes falling. But you can't live your life like that. You just got to do you. We've
all been told this. We all believe this, and I want to make sure that it doesn't come off that I'm trashing the people that this happens to, because good for them, because that's great. Like Kevin Smith, if his film had not been seen by Weinstein, like we wouldn't know who he is today. Like, and good for him. I mean, he does these people that make it and continue succeeding. They do the work. They've honed their skills. These are talented people, but the majority of the people working, that didn't happen to. That Cinderella story. I think it's important to just understand that, because I think especially those who don't live in Hollywood, don't live in LA, they're living in Toledo or something, and they're hanging on to that dream that will happen to them from there. It does happen. I mean, the guy that directed Shazam, I forget the director's name.
David.
Yeah.
I had Sandberg. I had him on the show. Yeah. His story with short films.
It's exactly the same. He was in Sweden. Boom. Picked from on high.
Literally from. Oh, he told me the whole story.
Yeah.
It was fascinating to hear this story. And he's like, yeah. And then I was flown over, and we were in LA, and me and my girlfriend didn't know what to do, and they put us up in a house. It's the lottery. It's literally the lottery ticket you could be.
And that's what we all are hoping for. That's what we all dream that will happen to us. But I do think it's really important to get grounded and understand that it might be a little bit longer of a slog.
Just a bit.
Yeah. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think to myself, I'm kind of glad that my first film didn't blow up like that, because,
Agreed.
I didn't know a whole lot back then. Man, I would have been like 25 if that film had blown up. And the amount of times I would have shot myself in the foot just because I'm so young and immature and didn't know how to deal with people, because film directing is very much about managing a large group of people and working for the biggest client you can imagine. So there's a maturity that's, I think, very important with that.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it, man. No question about it. Now you've gone down. I was looking at your filmography, and you've done a tremendous amount of shorts. You've really kind of dug into shorts a bit. What is the value of making short films? I mean, obviously, other than the lottery ticket idea, which I did that multiple times in my career, but you've really went all in. And we'll talk about the fan films in a minute that you did. But shorts specifically, what was your value in that, you think?
Well, it's interesting because it's kind of a two-pronged thing that happened to me personally. For one thing, shorts are not going to make you money for the most part. I mean, yes, sometimes they'll get bought and put as a package to something, but generally that you're not going to make money from that. You might get noticed from that. That's sort of what we hope. But really, shorts, as what it boils down to, is practice. It's just, let me shoot something and put it out there and see how an audience reacts to it. I think it's vital for everyone to do. I had a really interesting journey though, because I was doing shorts just like we all do. And it took a lot of work and a lot of effort. But I reached a point in my career where I had done one movie. I was doing, like I said, a lot of corporate work, live corporate work. And I found myself being exceedingly depressed. and anxious. And I realized I was very angry a lot, where I was literally the guy in the platform in the middle of the audience, shooting a speaker, walking left and walking right across the stage. And oftentimes, it's AT&T's annual convention, and he's giving the report of the annual sales, blah, blah, blah.
Riveting stuff. At
8 o'clock in the morning, you're in a suit and tie and and I'm up there so angry. I'm like almost in tears. Like, this is not where I thought I'd be at 29 or 30 or whatever. I don't even remember what age, but like,
you did use the Spielberg analogy, right? Like Spielberg made Jaws at 27.
That's right. And that's what sucks. That we have all these stories that we're continually comparing ourselves to. Like, if I'm not doing what Spielberg did at X age, then I am a failure as a person.
Right.
So and I was exactly trapped in that spiral. And it is a terrible spiral to get caught in. And most people I know struggle with this. Mm-hmm. And I found myself very bitter, very angry, and just this twisted up person. And I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be, because no one wants to be around that person. That is not a source of creativity. There's a book I would highly recommend people read called The Happiness Advantage. It's the study of joy. Yeah. So this is a study of joy. And in that book, they talk about where if you encounter a problem, let's say you got an edit, and the edit is an actor that wasn't very good, and you have to try to make this work with a bad performance. And if you approach that job with, oh man, I can't believe I have to work with this crappy actor, and I can't believe that this is my job, and poo, wah, 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 this bad, pessimistic view, versus, all right, what do you got for me today, actor? I'm going to make you look like a freaking rock star. Really an optimistic approach to it. The problem's still the same, but you're approaching it from an optimistic versus a pessimistic mindset. Mm-hmm. They have done studies where they will attach electrodes to the brain. And if you approach that problem optimistically, your mind is 30% more active. 30%. Pessimism literally shuts your mind off. So that as you get angry and twisted and frustrated, it is killing your creativity. It is. This is scientifically proven. And I'm finding myself in that same position. And one day I was watching the movie Jurassic Park. And you remember in Jurassic, this is so funny to me, because Jurassic Park, how old is this movie? 30 years? 93,
yeah.
Okay, so
92, 93, yeah.
Do you remember the scene in Jurassic Park where all the characters are sitting in the little ride, right? They're getting introduced to the park, and they're all inside that theater. And the little cartoon comes up. This is Dino DNA.
Yeah.
This movie's 30 years old, and everyone remembers this scene, which I'm going to come back to in a second. And the little cartoon says, this is how you make dinosaurs. Sometimes a mosquito gets stuck in the sap. That sap turns to amber. We extract it, da-da-da-da-da, and suddenly you have dino DNA, right? That whole scene. That scene is a corporate instructional video, which is exactly the kind of videos I was creating. Now, do you think when Spielberg went to make that part in his movie that he pissed and moaned and whined that he has to make a corporate video? Or did he go, man, how can I make this thing really cool? How can I make this thing like memorable and fun? And it's the scene in a 30-year-old movie that everyone remembers. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely vital to understand how that movie works. It's the informational piece. Anytime you have a sci-fi piece, a time travel movie, there's always a scene where you have to describe the way the mechanics work. That's a corporate video. So here I was, and I suddenly have this epiphany, like, wow, what if I approached my work that I'm getting hired to do in the same exact way? What if I just pretended that this video about how to make car seats, and I just thought about it like, maybe this is part of a bigger movie, that this is just one little piece of it. It didn't really change much in the way that I shot it necessarily, but well, actually, no, I take that back. It did. I started thinking about, how can I make this look more cinematic? How can I move the camera in a way that I would do for my movie? How can I craft the script so it really pulls the audience in and makes them engaged? I'm telling you, man, everything changed for me in that moment. everything changed. So I was doing shorts. I'd made a movie. And then all of a sudden the client started looking at the little videos I was making and went, this feels different than the other videos I'm seeing. Can we hire you to do a short? And I have made quite a career out of making shorts for corporations. I just finished one about a month ago. We shot a 20-minute long epic Roman soldier story about a plague that hit Rome in about 200 AD. And it was essentially, the story was about the first hospital that was born and how it was made. And it was freaking amazing. Like, we had a big budget, great actors. We had a full on set. We shot in Texas, and we had this really cool Middle Eastern style looking set. And it was so much fun. And, yeah.
So if I can unpack a little bit of what you're saying here, because I think it's something really valuable for everyone listening. Your perspective and your attitude change definitely changed the course of your career. Because if you would, and how many of us know the angry and bitter filmmaker? How many of us know that? And I always tell people, anytime I talk in front of people, I go, how many people here know an angry and bitter filmmaker? And a bunch of people hands right up. I go, if you didn't raise your hand up, you are the angry and bitter filmmaker that everybody else knows. So if you change your perspective on how you approach things, that comes through in the work. And that's exactly what happened to you. And we can't get stuck in this idea that we're all going to be a Spielberg or a Fincher or a Nolan or a Tarantino or a Kubrick. You can't get that stuck. If you're stuck that way, you'll never be able to move. If you wake up every morning going, I need to be as good as Steven Spielberg, you're never going to pick up a camera because you're talking about a master. You've got to be the best version of yourself. And I think that's what you did. And then you carved out this beautiful little niche for yourself.
Yeah. It's been amazing. And, when I'm on set doing that stuff, is it a big Academy Award winning film? No. Am I having the time of my life? Yes.
That's all.
Now, and that's not saying that none of that other stuff ever will happen. I believe that it still will. It's not that you have to let go of your dream, because here's a big thing that will happen. And I think this is so important. My flag that I will wave here is that our number one goal as artists, the number one thing that you have to fight to protect is your mental state, the way you think about your approach to art, because your anxiety that comes up, because we live in a business that is undulating. It's constantly moving. You get really busy for a season and then it crashes to a halt sometimes. It's the nature of what we do. And I don't care if you've been working for 2 years straight or 2 months straight, the minute that work stops, the anxiety begins. And it's usually the same kind of questions. Crap, I hope I work again. I hope I book another job. And that desperate, think about it like dating. Like, if you are sitting there going, gosh, I really wish I was married. I really, really want a wife. I just wish someone would love me. Go on a date and see how far that gets you. That desperate, anxious energy. Your partner. I mean, imagine being on a date with that person. You're like,
the aroma's in the air. It's like, it's like badge your car.
That's the kind of energy that you're projecting if you don't really carefully watch the mental state that you're in. And another thing, a second piece of this is, once I started, the car seat analogy that I used before, making a car, this is how you install a car seat into a Mercedes. Well, if you approach that like, all right, I'm going to imagine this is part of my movie, suddenly a really interesting thing happens, and it happened to me. I start having fun. It brings this level of joy to the work. And I think that's vital, because if we don't allow that to happen, and I don't care if you're shooting a wedding video or a corporate interview with a CEO, if you don't find a way to bring that joy to your work, all you're doing is postponing your joy to somewhere down the line. You're going to sit there and go, I am not going to allow myself to be happy until I get whatever it is that you defined, that Universal Studios movie or the Marvel film. I'm going to sit here and be miserable until I get there. All you're doing is setting yourself up for complete disappointment and frustration. And you're going to become that twisted person that you don't want to be. I think it's so important to think about this.
Do you know the story of how James Cameron got his first shot as a director?
I do not.
So he was working for Roger Corman as a props guy. And he was doing a really bad Roger Corman film back then. And he was like just shooting, I think, the second unit. They gave him like a shot of maggots like coming out of some sort of meat. It was an insert shot, which is the equivalent of a car seat. It's the equivalent of the car seat analogy that you gave. But Jim was so excited about doing that shot, had such great energy that he was trying to make this be the best maggots coming out of meat shot in movie history. This is the way he was looking at it. So what did he do? He was doing something that Roger Corman was walking behind, and he just saw this kid. and then he would turn the camera on, and he was doing something that made the maggots dance.
I think I heard this electric. Yeah, go ahead.
So he turns the camera off, and then they stop. And Roger Corman's like, if this kid could direct maggots, I'm going to give him a movie. And what he was doing was he's sending electrical shots through the sheet, through the meat, so they would just and then would just go down. So that was what he was doing. And then he got Piranha 2, The Spawning, the greatest flying piranha film ever made. But look at that example, and look at the career that James Cameron. Imagine if he would have just said, "Oh, frick, man, I got to shoot some maggots. I don't want to do that. I want to be making a movie. I don't want to be." But it was. I don't want to be doing it. Yeah, I don't want to be. Who wants to be doing that shot? But he did, and he was super excited about it.
Think about it. If you were in charge looking for a director, and if there was someone who was saying your words, would you hire you? Would you want that energy on your set? If I'm watching a guy doing that same shot and I see him smiling and he's just having fun with it, hey, that's the kind of energy that's an optimistic kind of approach. I think there's also this weird, it's sort of this unspoken law in film where there's legitimate and illegitimate kind of work. And I think a lot of us look at every single book written is written towards the upper echelon of Hollywood, that's where we want to work. We want to work way up here, and everything between point A and point B is somehow illegitimate. It's look down your nose at whatever you call it, the wedding video or instructional video. It's somehow that's just not legit, right?
Right. And I'll tell you what, I had a director on the show years ago, and he has directed over 100 features. Over 100 features he's made, and he does a lot of Hallmark and Lifetime movies. He does 3 to 4 movies a year. He's been doing it for 30 years. Like he's just been pounding it, 3, 4, 5 movies a year. And I was talking, we had a serious conversation. I go, you know what? If anyone has a problem with the kind of filmmaking you're doing, tell them to go screw off, dude. Because you're living the life. You're being paid to direct. You have a good life. You live in Los Angeles. You get to fly out to exotic locations and get to direct and make the movies you're making. Who gives a crap at what anyone else says? Because a lot of people are like, oh, he just makes Lifetime movies. Screw off. He's living his dream. If he's happy, what the hell? So like, I would guarantee you, like most people listening would kill for a career like that, Yeah. Because we all want to do Jurassic Park, man. Who doesn't? I mean, Fincher wants to be Kubrick. Nolan wants to be Kubrick. Spielberg wanted to be Kurosawa. Lucas wanted to be Kurosawa. Coppola wanted to be Kurosawa. Like everybody wants to be something they're not until they figure out, oh, I'm going to be the best version of me. And that's when greatness happens.
And it doesn't mean you let go of any of that dream. All it means is I'm just going to enjoy what I've got right now. And, are you in your little corporate, let's say you're doing a corporate training film. Are you not working with a camera? Well, yes, I am. Are you not working with an actor? Actually, we cast for this and there's a subject in front of me doing the thing. Are you not working with a makeup artist or a DP? Like all the elements it's the same mechanics are there. What you're getting to do is someone's paying you to practice your craft. And now you're not going to if it doesn't work, who cares? It's just an instructional video about how to install a car seat. Big deal.
But if you're directing Tom Cruise and it doesn't work, you're done.
Right, exactly. So you get to work out all these kinks along the way before you actually get there, and there's a real joy in that, a real freedom in that, and
I agree with you 100%, brother. Now, there's one of the big things that you've done a couple of 2 or 3 fan films that have been very well received. The first question when you reached out to me was like, I have to ask him this, dude. I have to ask, because I've been dying to find out, because there's fan films that get made all the time. There's like Star Wars fan films and Ghostbuster fan films and so many different types of fan films. And sometimes, the copyright holders are not as friendly, let's say, as Lucasfilms is. Now, from what I understand, Lucasfilms has a very open, loving relationship with the fans and fan films and encourages them. But with that said, that was before the mouse bottom. And secondly, how do you dance the line between copyright and fandom, which is something that so many filmmakers out there would maybe want to make a Star Wars project? Because I've been involved with shorts and the post world that the copyright holder said, stop it, or we're suing you.
Yeah.
So how did you dance that line? And did you? And by the way, did the mouse call?
No, they did not. So there are certain IPs that exist. You're exactly right. There's certain IPs that exist where they are very cool with people making fan films. The biggest rule is you just can't make money on it. If you start trying to charge for views or something, that's where you'll get in trouble. Star Wars is one of those. In fact, they even have a contest for the best fan film. I don't know if they still do it, but back when The Force Awakens came out, there was a big fan film contest that I think J.J. Abrams even was like, hey, send us your great fan film. They even had music on their website that you could download and use in your film and stuff like that. So they're very encouraging to filmmakers, and that all came from George Lucas. Video games are the same. They're usually very open, welcoming to IP, but there are other IPs that are not, that you should do your research if you're going to do one. I think one of those is Doctor Who. I don't think that they take too kindly to other people making fan films about Doctor Who. I think Harry Potter, they're open to it. You just kind of have to.
It's a weird thing. Wisely. I know DC kind of comes and goes depending on what they want to do. And the very famous case was Star Trek, when they which have been very, very cool for most of its life, of the IP. They've been very cool with fan films, but then they went too far. They raised like $1.5 million for a fan film, and it was going to be this feature length fan film, and it was like and then that's when Paramount's like, okay, guys. Yeah, and then now there's rules, so they actually had to lay out like a rule set for film people. Like, you can't make it this much money. They're not, because it got too big. The fandom got too big, because now you have no control over the IP. It's one thing to do a $20,000, $30,000, maybe even $50,000, $100,000, fan film, but when you're making a $1.5 million fan film, the danger of things going awry becomes exponentially more.
Yeah, you just have to be careful, and before you shoot anything, you should probably make sure, before you go through all this effort, that you don't end up with a $1 million home movie. Like, you want to make sure people actually.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, there was a filmmaker I had on the show who made a infamous Punisher.
Really?
An infamous Punisher fan film that was like handed around the Comic-Cons, and people were like, but it was so violent. It was, I think it was Punisher and Wolverine, I think, or something. It was like really a badass Punisher led fan film. But then Marvel called them, and I think that, and then said that's no, and he had to pull it off. And I asked him, like, does it exist? He's like, no, I've burned all the copies. Yeah, right. And if you're not watching the interview, my eyes did a little shifty thing. But I'm like, can I see it? He's like, it doesn't exist, Alex. So you got to be careful with fan films. So I was always fascinated with fan films. Now, you did a fan film. Your first Star Wars fan film, if I'm not mistaken, is The Force and the Fury, which I'm going to put links to all these in the show notes of the show. And I tell everybody, if you're interested, watch it. It is fascinating to see a well-produced fan film of Star Wars, because there's so many bad ones. There's just so many.
Yeah.
There's really a lot of bad ones. But this was so beautiful because you did something that was really interesting in that short, that you used the environment, which was low cost, was like a forest, but it looks so beautiful, and the production value looks so big. It was basically just two people fighting a sword battle inside of the forest. But the quality of the imagery and the color grading and everything was so solid. So it was so beautiful. How was that film received? Because that was the first big Star Wars fan film you made.
Yeah, well, I did. So I've done 3 fan films. The first one I ever did was for Splinter Cell, the game Splinter Cell. It's called Splinter Cell Extraction. So this was my second attempt at doing a fan film. And yeah, it did quite well. People really liked it. And
did it do anything for you, like on a career standpoint?
I will say that what it did was grease the wheels. So it didn't necessarily get me in a room, but it got the door open at least. And here's the reason why you do a fan film. I mean, yes, it's fun to play with lightsabers, of course.
I mean, that goes without saying, sir.
Yes, it's really fun to play in these universes. But the real reason is, if you think about it, you make a short, hey, and you get it done, and you're telling your people about it. Like, oh, I made this short film. So it's about a guy who doesn't know who he is, but he realizes he's got wings, and he starts to think maybe he's an angel or whatever. I'm just spitballing, but like. And the people listening are like, oh yeah, cool. What's the name of it? Oh, it's called Job Well Done or whatever. And then the next question is always, how long is it? And so basically my point is you have to talk people into watching your short. You're trying to sell it all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Your mom's going to see it. And of course she's going to love it. And all your friends will watch it. And you'll have your little premiere. But then beyond that, you're going to have to try to talk everyone else into watching it. Unless it's just so phenomenal, it catches fire and spreads the world. Great. Good for you. Or you go, so I made a Star Wars film. Generally, the reaction is, really? What's it called? Oh, I'm totally going to check this out. My cousin loves Star Wars. My mom loves Star Wars. And I totally check it out. That's the difference. The most views I ever got on any short that I ever did was like 20,000 views, 30,000 views. I haven't looked lately to see what Force and Fury is up to, but it's in the hundreds of thousands, I believe.
453,000.
453,000. And I've barely promoted it. Like, boom, it's just like everywhere. Kenobi, when we did Kenobi, that hit 1 million views in 24 hours. And that's why you do those, like, because your work the whole name of the game is to get your work seen, right? You want people to say, oh, this person knows what they're doing. You do a fan film, it's just more eyeballs watching what you're doing.
I mean, one of the most famous fan film stories of all time is the Mortal Kombat one, which was done by John. Oh God, he did the movie Fame, which died a miserable death at the box office. And he was pretty much going to be thrown into director jail. I forgot his name. It's John something. I forgot his last name, but he was already, he's like, I'm done. It's over. No one's going to hire me. So he's like, you know what? I'm going to make a Mortal Kombat fan film. And he made such a good Mortal Kombat fan film that the rights holders hired him to do a web series of it. Then that turned into the feature version of it. And now they're making the sequel of the feature. All started with a fan film. Now, he was an established director, so he wasn't an unknown quantity. But he took a shot because he had no other choice. He's like, I'm done. He made Fame. And it died. It was like, it's almost as bad as Gem and the Holograms. When that showed up, it just died. It was dead on arrival. So that's how he made it. And then he just dumped it. He just dumped it into the internet, and people lost their mind because it was really cool. It was like basically a violent, cool version of Mortal Kombat with backstory and story arcs. And he went all in. So that's a really famous version of it. So I think that's another thing that filmmakers have a dream of is when if they make a Star Wars fan film, they all want Kathleen Kennedy to call them up, or now John Favreau to call them up and go, look, man, I saw your fan film. I'd love you to do an episode of The Mandalorian. That's now the new dream of doing a fan film. Yeah. It hasn't happened to my understanding yet.
Well, I know that people have seen it. I know it made the rounds at Disney. I know that we actually ended up on Steven Soderbergh put out a list of films that he watched. Whatever year we put that out, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was on his list. It actually got me on the cover of the New York Times, which is pretty crazy. So like it did
It
get a
works.
lot of mileage. Yeah. And that's not to say that the life is over. Like it may come up, but it has helped get me in the room.
Because there was a guy who made this, this beautiful short. This is back in 2008, 2005, 2006. He made Batman versus the Predator versus aliens.
Oh yeah.
Remember that one? I forgot his name. He was so talented, but yet never could get farther than where he went with those things. It was interesting to me. I always found that interesting because I was like, he's obviously super talented, and he did a few of those. But there was also the timing. I guess it was the timing of it all and things like that. Yeah. But he didn't go any farther than that. So I'm glad to hear that these films have done good for you and opened the door. But Kenobi's done 18 million views. I mean, or 7 million, 7 million, sorry. 7 million views. 18 million was the trailer for the Kenobi show. I just saw they were next to each other. But still, but you had over 7 million views for a short that,
and it's been great because I know there have been situations where I want to meet somebody, that I would like to connect to. This is Jason. He's done this, that, and the other. He did that Kenobi short. And a lot of times they've seen it. Like, holy crap, you did that? Oh, what was your name? Jason? So it hasn't necessarily I haven't gotten a call from on high, but it has opened the door, helped grease those wheels. So I would say it was absolutely worth doing. And even if nothing ever happened from it, the people I met on it and the connections I was made through that was really good. Jamie Costa being one of them, who was he's become a close friend, and he's, very successful actor and things like that. So, that's another reason why you do these things, is to you're just trying to make as many friends as you can.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is to kind of demystify the fan film, and also demystify what you should expect out of a fan film if you're going to go down that road. And I love your approach to it because it's a very practical approach. Hey man, I get to go play with lightsabers and stormtroopers and have a good time and play and you came out with Kenobi before they came out with Kenobi. So that was pretty awesome.
We were on set filming when they announced that they were going to do it.
That's so cool.
So we were like, oh crap, we got to hurry up and finish our film before they come out with the series. But yeah,
right, because then wouldn't be it wouldn't be the same. You better hurry up and get it out there fast.
I would say, if you're going to do it, first of all, like I said, it's exactly that comparison of if you're going to make a short, a fan film is a really good option. A lot of people will watch it if they're fans. It's the same thing happened with Splinter Cell. People just really like Splinter Cell. They're going to watch it. I just met somebody recently who said, dude, I used to work at Ubisoft when Splinter Cell came out. We all loved that film. We were hoping you'd put another one out. It will get eyeballs. It will help you a lot. But if you're going to, let's say you're going to make a Star Wars film, make sure that you do it with love and do it with quality. Make sure that you're filling a gap that the audience needs. Don't have Jedis be, for example, don't make a Jedi be an assassin, because that's just you don't understand what the Jedi are. They are not attackers. They are defenders. They are monastic, people. They're more about peace. So understand the lore, because you'll get crucified. The audience.
Oh my God. Can you imagine?
Well, people see that stuff as sacred, it's their precious Star Wars. So come at it with that and make sure, if you don't understand the lore, get someone who does to help you with the script so that you can really embed it. And it can be a beautiful thing if you do it right.
Now I'm going to ask you a question, a little geek fandom fan film trivia question. What was the first Star Wars fan film?
Was it Troops?
Yep, it was.
Was it Troops?
It was Troops.
If you haven't watched Troops,
if you haven't seen Troops, if you can find an SD version of it somewhere on the internet, Troops was the first time anyone, to my understanding or knowledge, took the Star Wars universe and made a fan film from it. And it was basically, it was following stormtroopers on the kind of like Cops follows cops.
Yes.
And it was like all about, and it was a domestic disturbance at Uncle Ben's.
Yeah, right.
And there was like, and then it was so funny and hilarious. And that was what early, oh God, man, that must have been,
that was a long time.
2002.
I think before that, I think it was like the 80s
late
and 90s.
No, it was late 90s. It was the internet. So the internet hadn't really kicked in until the late 90s.
Yeah, good point.
So it was probably late 90s. And I remember seeing like a postage stamp version of it on, it wasn't even QuickTime. I think it was Flash, playing on the internet, and everyone was just like, oh my God. And it was like, oh, it was so funny. But that is for everyone, if you're curious to see an amazing fan film.
It's really good.
No lightsabers. No lightsaber, because they couldn't do the visual effects back then. So they just had a bunch of stormtroopers out there. And it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So when you were making Kenobi, man, because it was so well put together and beautifully shot. And I mean, there's some complexity to the action sequences and things like that. I got to ask, there's always that day on set. And I asked this to a lot of guests. There's always that day on set. And generally, it's almost every day. But there's that one specific day that everything's going wrong. World's coming down, crashing around you, and you're making a fan film with no expectations to ever make $1 from it. So now it's just like, this is pure love. And if things aren't going right, what was the worst day of that production, and how did you get through it?
Every day was pretty much a disaster on Kenobi. And I don't, this isn't against any people, like, the people were great.
You're in the desert.
Else. We're in the desert.
You're in the
desert. So in a positive side, like Jamie and I worked tirelessly on the script to like really make sure that we understood who Kenobi was, and we understood this whole planet and where he was in his spiritual journey, his emotion, all that stuff. So that when we got to set, there was very little conversation needed because we'd already gone through. He was dialed into that character. But so we shot in 2 separate locations. One was in an Odessa Caves. I think it's called Odessa Caves. And that went okay, except it was a night shoot and complicated. And then we went to a place called Trona Pinnacles, which is kind of near Death Valley. Oh. And so we're shooting out there in the middle of the desert with stormtroopers, and those helmets, they can't see anything below. Like if you were to take your fingers and put them below your eyes, you can't see your feet. That's what it's like to wear those helmets. They also can't sit down because of the way the armor sits on the body. So just to like walk around is really cumbersome for those guys. Day one, we had wind gusts up to 30, 40 miles an hour.
Nice.
We had our props truck got into a car accident on the way to set. So we had no land speeder. We didn't have the moisture evaporator. We didn't have anything. We had no set. We had the actors, we had the costumes. So I was trying to direct. I had to start backwards. I had to start with insert shots of like, I have no set to shoot on, and I've got, the winds were blowing so high that I could barely record dialogue. So I had to shoot all these extra pieces. It was the biggest jigsaw puzzle. It was so hard. So like there's a shot where all the stormtroopers come up over this hill, and James Arnold Taylor, side note, who is the voice of Obi-Wan Kenobi in all the cartoons, comes up on over the hill and he says, "Oh, and Imbaru, greetings on behalf of the Empire." That scene, I have a behind the scene on my phone. It was, the wind was just blowing and blowing and blowing. And the stormtroopers kept tripping over rocks and boulders and stuff because they could not see. And they're trying to stay in formation. Oh my gosh, we must have shot that 15 times to try to get that right. The second day, the wind died down and we had a set, but then we had a child there. And Audi, who played our little Luke, Precious, this cutest little kid, was just young enough to where he didn't quite understand we were making a movie. So to him, it's sort of like playtime pretend. And you surround him with these scary stormtrooper outfits in the hot, sweaty desert. He would cry, and like, we would do a couple takes, and he'd like it. It was really challenging. And what kept happening is we ended up I had to shoot a whole bunch with him, and it kept pushing our dialogue scene back.
You're stressing out as you're telling the story.
Oh man, it was so hard. It kept pushing our dialogue scenes back because all these things would end up happening. So our dialogue kept getting pushed until the fight sequence came up and we had no time. So in the end of that film, he basically fights all the stormtroopers blinded. That's 2 takes. When we went to shoot that scene, we were in this bowl. The sun had already disappeared behind the bowl. So there was no sun. We had to run out, all the stormtroopers running, and we had to run out to this big open area. And the sun is sitting on the horizon, sitting right there. And I'm like, we're going to do a wide shot and a close-up shot. And then we had the Steadicam operator just run around in a big circle. And there's a behind-the-scenes shot of the sound guy and everyone running as fast as they can, like the arms of a clock, around this whole lightsaber thing. People are diving to get out of the shot. And that was our entire battle. We shot in 2 separate takes. And it was like, and then boom, the sun goes below the horizon. We all just collapsed in a big heap. And oh man. And we barely had enough to put the fight scene, barely had enough to put it together. But we got it just by the hair of our chinny chin chin. So.
I love these stories because for filmmakers who have not been able to make their first movie yet, or even their first short, this is the reality of what directing is.
It's problem solving.
It's compromise and problem solving. It's all compromise and problem solving. And by the way, for everyone listening, it could happen at the level of making a fan film, and it could happen at the level of making a real Star Wars giant. Big budget Star Wars movie. I've heard the stories. I mean, people go crazy. I had a director on the other day who made $200 million movie, and they're like, "Yeah, we were the sun was going down. Mm-hmm. We only had that day with that action sequence, so we just shot the damn thing in a wide, and we had 2 other cameras, and that action sequence had 7 cameras. When the moment came for the shot, only 2 worked.
Well,
everything else was done.
Yeah, that happens. It doesn't matter what the project is. It could be anything, but this is why you plan. This is the importance of planning, of meticulous, further than you even want to go. When I did my first film, the $12,000 one, I couldn't throw money at my problems. So I went and measured every single location and put it on grid paper on how big each room was. And I could measure, like, will a dolly track even fit in this hallway, or is it going to be a moot point, so that I could so when I got to the location, I knew exactly what I was going to do, because problems, they just will happen. On my last feature, The Abandoned, we had to do a wartime sequence. It opens with these 2 soldiers caught in a firefight. Well, first of all, it's supposed to be Iraq. And we were shooting in Spokane, Washington, surrounded by snow. So we had all this snow that we were trying to frame out. We had about 4 lights and a couple of flame bars, and we're setting this scene up, and the DP gets a migraine. And it's so bad that he can't stand up straight. And so our entire production grinds to a halt because he is just in agony and can barely hold his head up. By the time we got that fixed, we only had like 2 hours to get the whole thing. So the only way it worked was because he and I had very meticulously, everything was storyboarded. We knew exactly what shots to get and what we needed to pull off a big action scene. It's the only way you'll get it done. And that holds true for every single project that you do. Plan more than you'll ever think you'll need to.
Now, one last question I have in regards to the fan film, bro. The VFX, man, how did you get those done on a budget and make them look good on all of your fan films? Because that's something it's always the sticking point. And then if I may tell you just one little Star Wars fan film story,
of course,
of when I wasn't gonna do it. I was brought in as a VFX supervisor in 2006, I think 6 or 7. I was called in because I had done a lot of visual effects on my first short film that did viral and did a whole bunch of good stuff for me. And this guy came in and he was absolutely mad. Like, he was so mad in his mind. He was delusional. He was crazy. And he thought that he truly thought that George Lucas was going to come and give him a job. Like it wasn't even a thought in his mind that wasn't going to happen. So that he shows me this and like this thing that he's so proud of, and I'm looking at it and I'm like, it's okay, it's fine. But then he's like, I need you to get rid of all of these stunt guys, rig, all the cables,
all the wiring,
all the wiring and the green screen and stuff. But I'm like, oh, okay, this is 2006. Okay, 2006. So everyone listening, 2006 VFX and capabilities at the budget level of an indie film. And there was no trackers anywhere.
Oh man,
there's no tracking marks anywhere, and it would have to be hand painted, shot by shot, in 2006 with 2006 technology, as far as processing power and everything. Today, it could be done. It'd be a pain, but it could be done much quicker, much easier. Then it wasn't. And I told him, like, dude, you're it's useless. You can't go anywhere with it. And then he's like, oh, you just don't know what you're doing. And he went off and did it. And he went off and tried to get it done somewhere else. And I always wondered whatever happened to it. So a year later, I checked to see if it still wasn't finished. I don't even know if it ever got finished, but it was.
Oh, really?
It was so and I'm sure you've run into some delusional filmmakers along your path over the years, and it's sad to see that because we've all we have to be a little delusional to do what we do.
Yeah.
To think that you could go off and make a Kenobi short film in the middle of the desert with a bunch of stormtroopers and lightsaber battles.
Oh, it'll be easy.
You got to be a little insane. So there's that.
You have to be a little crazy.
But you got to be able to balance that off. So anyway, that was my little VFX story. So I have to ask, how did you get into VFX stuff?
So when it comes to VFX, I try to be as practical as I possibly can. It doesn't matter if I'm doing, because I approached my last feature the same way. So I've seen a lot of shorts and features that basically never get released because of the VFX. I have a friend who's working on a short right now, and they're trying to create this floating orb thing that is giving him fits because, oh man, we got to shade it right so it looks organic in the scene. Like it's and there's 50 shots with it in there. Like it exponentially grows because they didn't really think about while they're filming, is there a way to do this where I don't have to make a VFX shot for every single shot? So I think that's really important to think about that. I try not to shoot green screen whenever I can. I try to do as much practical as I can. And if I know I'm going to need to have a ship flying by in the background, to try to incorporate in as much realism as I can. So here's a perfect example. In Kenobi, in the beginning of it, he's in a sandstorm. And every single person on the crew weirdly thought I was going to do that digitally, which I was like, why would I do? You know how we made that? We had 2 leaf blowers and a bag of dirt and a couple of fans.
And a close-up shot and you're out the door.
Well, yeah, we kind of staggered a couple of the fans deeper into the shot. So like it would continue to blow the dirt. We had used Fuller's Earth. It was really light and fluffy. We had a leaf blower right behind the camera blasting Jamie in the face. And he I talked about this since, like it's really effective for him as an actor to like have the visceral wind blow, and he's just fighting against it. It really helped him. And to keep his face safe, we just blew smoke into his face as opposed to dirt. So it had 2 layers to it. The dirt's heavier, the smoke is lighter. And that's it. And it became I think a pretty realistic windstorm. So lightsabers are pretty easy to do, to be honest.
VFX, nowadays they are, yeah.
Yeah. Now I will say on Force and Fury, the crew is much smaller, and there is a moment in the film, I think it's like at 5 minutes and 46 seconds, where I didn't put I think I missed it in the reflection of a piece of pane, a glass. If you scroll through the comments of that video, like everybody's like, oh, 546, you missed the lightsaber effect. Lame. Like everybody's like, by the way, you screwed up. Thanks for letting me know. Like it's actually kind of hilarious.
Bastards.
You jerks. I'm not perfect. I know it's hard to believe. But lightsaber stuff are pretty easy. But when you start to go beyond that, I would strive to be as practical as possible. In my feature, The Abandoned, we had to do some weightless stuff. There's multiple sequences in the film. The premise of the film is this guy trapped in this cube. It's essentially a large 20 by 20 room. And at several points in the film, gravity starts to change and he gets thrown all around inside the box. We basically used every camera trick in the book to make that happen. We built sets on their side. We built them in V shapes. We had rotating boxes like Inception. We did wire work. We had a camera on what's called a lambda head so that the camera could be tilted to the side. So when he's going sideways through the camera, it looks like he's flowing from top of the frame to the bottom of the frame. So like we did every kind of trick in the book. And it's crazy how some of those simple camera tricks actually will do huge favors for you. I would go there first when you're doing VFX, look at what the camera can do for you, as opposed to, let's throw a green screen up and figure out how to do it later. That usually is a recipe for problems.
Listen, I have many good friends who work in the VFX world, and they work on Marvel movies, Star Wars movies, Bond movies, and I've seen some of the shots that they get to clean up, and I'm like, aren't these professionals? Aren't these professional filmmakers making these shots? Yeah. They're like, dude, and I'm talking about Oscar-winning filmmakers who just like, whatever, let them deal with it. And they do because they have the money to do so. When you're making indie film, you just can't do that.
Yeah. If you're in a position where you can't throw money at your problems, try to find a way not to use the VFX. And I don't mean that you can't have the effect. It doesn't mean you can't use the explosion or something, but there are so many cool go look at the original Dracula. Have you ever seen Dracula with the one that was directed by Coppola?
Oh, no, that one. Oh, no, that Coppola? Oh, God, 92. Fantastic film.
So some of the stuff that he did in that was practical. It was all magic tricks.
Almost all of it was practical, if I'm not mistaken.
Really, I mean, there's effects in there. I can't figure out how they did. Like when he turns into a demon thing and he backs up into the corner and you just see his eyes and then the lights turn on and it's all rats. Like that's some sort of in-camera trick that they did.
It is, yeah. I'm a kind of an expert on that film because it was one of my favorite films growing up. So I had the Criterion Laserdisc, so I discovered a lot of those tricks.
Cool.
So just as like Keanu Reeves walks in to Dracula's castle for the first time, this is something so simple. This is Coppola's genius. They do a close-up shot of his foot crossing the threshold. They shot that in reverse.
Oh, they did?
And they just that little hesitation just makes you go, there's something wrong here. Something as simple as that. And then every other trick, he did it old school, like, from the silent era. He was using all sorts of in-camera tricks, matte paintings. That's all. He did a lot of hand crank, overcrank, undercrank, reverse shots. He did everything. If anybody wants to see how a master shoots practically, go watch Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder. Absolutely a masterpiece. Absolutely a masterpiece.
Well, yeah, that's a perfect test. Yeah, that's perfect because I would say that's the real key to making practical effects work. So when we did in Kenobi, there's a bunch of laser shot blasters or shooting blasters.
Laser guns.
Wow. That's not very Star Wars of me. The stormtroopers are shooting blasters. Well, we didn't want to just do the blasters. What we had was a paintball gun with dust hits. So we're hitting the ground with actual dust hits. And then when you layer in the blaster shot, it just makes it feel more organic in the scene. That is the key to making VFX work, is seeing how much you can build on your own, and then the VFX just becomes a nice little polish to the top of it.
So it's a nice layer on the cake. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's same thing I did with my first short film. I used airsoft guns that actually had blowback. So when I shot, I would do the muzzle flash digitally, and I would light up the scene, the guy's face in shake. So we'd light up the face. But the gun was shooting off. Yeah. And it looked like a real gun. That was the thing I always got so pissed off about indie films, is like the guns never had blowback. But when I found an airsoft gun, I was like, oh, that's great. So if you could combine practical with it, it's always the best. And if you're smart and you do it that way, and even in the big budget films, that's when things start looking really, really good. What was that movie that just came out that was, I just saw the Bond film the other day, No Time to Die. And you just, what is that? Top Gun. Yeah. All practical. And it just, you could sense it. You can feel it. sense it's something that you just can't do in the camera and in visual effects.
But that it just has that visceral feel. Like,
yeah, no
look
question.
at the difference between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Like
no question about it. Now tell me about the new film Abandon, man. How did you get that? Mm-hmm. How did you get that off the ground? How did you get the financing for it? All that kind of good stuff.
So the Abandon, it was a really interesting story. So I met the writer at the Austin Screenwriter Festival, which if you're a screenwriter, I cannot recommend that festival enough. It is probably one of the best festivals I've ever been to. Excellent panels and speakers and things like that. So I went there and I met Dwayne Worrell. He was on a panel. We became fast friends. And he sent me a script that it was one of those, I sat down to read it, thinking I'll just read the opening scene and go to bed. I read the opening scene. I'm like, whoa, this is really, really good. And let me just read the next scene. Before I knew it, I'd finished the whole thing. It never happens. Read the script front to back. I was blown away. And the whole thing is essentially about a soldier who is in the middle of a firefight in Iraq. He gets hit with a bright light and he wakes up in this room that's like a prison cell with no doors, no windows, no exits, no furniture. Nobody talks to him. He has no idea how he got there. He has all his weapons and equipment. And then things start getting weird. Writing starts appearing on the wall and, gravity starts to act odd, and the temperature of the room starts to fluctuate really wildly from freezing cold to incredibly hot temperatures. And every time you think you know what's happening, it changes. And essentially the whole premise of the movie is that he's got to try to escape. And the only person he can find to help him is someone on the phone who claims to be in an identical room. And it's a big mystery from there. And it was an incredible script. And as you're reading it, it's like, this would be a great low budget film because it's one actor in a room. How easy would that to be? Little did I know. But so I took it to a production company and they immediately liked it. It was someone else. Actually, I met them at Mammoth. I met them after one of their screenings. We became fast friends again, passed them the script. They said, this looks good. And boom, it was kind of what you dream of hope happening when it comes to getting films off the ground. After all the years of struggle, this one was just like, boop, 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 it just kind of fell together. And it was very cool. So that's how it was born. The shooting of it was a whole other thing because, when you read a script about one guy trapped in a room and you think this would be super easy to shoot, then you sit down to shoot it and you're like, how the hell am I going to shoot this? It's one guy in a room and I can't cut away from the room because it's like, you can't cut to the next day because you were in the room with him. How am I going to cover that? And man, that was tough to figure out how to do it. It was like directing a play, to be honest. It really forced me to pull out all the stops when it comes to working with an actor, because it's all on the actor's face and it's all about them giving a good performance and making it believable that he's trapped there. So
that's awesome. And it just got picked up by Lionsgate, right?
It got picked up by Lionsgate. I don't know where it's going to go from there. There's rumors it'll get theatrical. We're all hoping for that, but I don't 100% know. It's called The Abandon. And I'm exceedingly proud of this film. It's done very well. It's gotten a lot of really positive reviews. People are really enjoying it. It's a sci-fi thriller on the vein of like Primer or The Cube. I mean, the obvious comparison is The Cube, but it's a smarter version of The Cube, I think, because it's a very emotional kind of journey too for these characters.
That's awesome, man. And how did you raise the money for it?
Well, the production company that I went to, Millhouse, they funded it.
That's awesome, dude. That's great. It's good work if you can get it, sir.
You know what? That's what I love about this industry is it's all possible. Anything and everything is possible. Is it easy? Is it hard? It can be very difficult, but not impossible. You can actually get there. And this is just one of those cases where everything fell together really well. And it's I love it. I love it.
That's awesome. I'm so glad. I mean, you can sense the love coming from the other side of the screen about your project, man. It's so awesome. I hope it does well for you, man. And,
Thank you.
And you keep rocking and rolling, man. I want to see some more cool stuff from you, man.
Absolutely.
No, it's nice to see us old folks, do some cool stuff, man.
What? I'm old.
I know my head still thinks I'm 25, but then when you can feel when it's going to rain, that's probably
Ooh, I guess there's a cloud.
Clouds coming. The back's hurting.
Yeah. Man, I love this industry. I love making, and you know what? It's a privilege to do this.
Absolutely.
I was on a shoot recently where we were out in Joshua Tree. We had to get up it was interesting because we'd gotten up at 4:00 in the morning. It was a really long commute. We had to hump all the gear out to the base of this cliff. We were shooting a rock climber. And I looked over at the first AC and the gaffer, and I'm like, isn't this cool? Like, isn't this cool what we're doing? And they laughed at me. They were like, pfft. They thought I was being sarcastic. I said, no, I'm serious. Like, look at where we are. We're in Joshua Tree getting paid to shoot a rock climber. Are we tired? Sure. But we're getting to participate in the magic of storytelling. And there's a lot of people in the world who would love to do this, who can't. And we're privileged to be a part of it. And it is the best job in the world, as far as I'm concerned.
I agree with you, but I could only imagine that the gaffer and the grip that you were talking to were just like, this son of a bitch, as he's carrying all the freaking gear across the rocks of Joshua Tree. And this guy's like, hey guys, isn't this great?
Like, screw you, man.
Screw you, dude. My back's killing me. But you are absolutely right, sir. Now I'm going to ask you a few questions. I ask all of my guests.
Yes.
What advice would you give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today?
Find a mentor. Because I personally wasted a lot of time fishing around to try to figure out how to get from A to B. Years and years I burned just not having someone to ask advice to. And they don't have to be Spielberg. They can be anyone who's further down the road than you are. Like, I wish I had someone to even tell me where to live or how to budget or anything like that could have saved me a lot of pain. Yeah. So I was, 100% find someone to connect to. Yeah.
What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
I'm going to go back to the whole thing about the mental attitude, the battle of keeping the optimism in your life, keeping that spark there. It's become so important to me that I will listen to motivational speakers on my pillow before I go to sleep, of just, people like a Tony Robbins or a Wayne Dyer, like of just keeping your eyes up and not grind into the position that you're in. And, and just understanding that the position that you're in is probably the one that you chose. So,
and it's temporary.
Yeah. If there's anything consistent about this business, it's that it's inconsistent. It goes up, it goes down. You have seasons of harvest and seasons of scarcity. It just happens. And it's still a process. It's not like I've got it all figured out, but like seeing this business for the beauty that it is and the creativity that it can be and how to fight the frustrations that come, to focus on the abundance in your life as opposed to the scarcity. I think that's a big one for filmmakers because it's really easy to think about what I don't have, the job that I don't have, or that someone else got ahead of me, or the money. Oh gosh, I wish I had X dollars in my account, or I wish I had a manager or an agent. Instead of all you're going to do is continue to attract that into your life. If you keep focusing on what you don't have, you're basically going to attract the same thing. So instead of shifting it to look at how many amazing, talented friends I have. These are talented, wonderful people who bring opportunities to me. It's like if you find a penny on the ground, if you're walking down the street, you see a penny on the ground, you have two ways to look at it. You can say, great, that's all I get is a penny. I mean, compare that to what all I can get in my career is a wedding video. Great, screw you, universe. Or you can look at that penny and go, I am so surrounded by abundance that money is falling from the sky. It can change everything for you. So that, and it's a process to retrain your mind like that. But I believe it's very key to the survival.
Amen, brother. Amen. Preach, brother. Preach. And what are 3 of your favorite films of all time?
Man, 3. Oh, it's so hard to narrow it down. I always fall back to my favorite film of all time is Aliens. And I'm sure other people have probably said that, but it just has all the elements I love. It's part action, it's part thriller, it's comedy, it's got all the characters are very 3-dimensional and thought out. It's got great escalations. It's just such, I love that movie. I've always loved it. It's the kind of movies I'd love to make. I'd have to throw Back to the Future in there.
Oh, I think
Back to the Future is.
You could throw the trilogy. You could throw all 3 as one. That's fine.
The first one is about as close as it gets to a perfect movie. It's
pretty much
the way it's built, the way it's laid out is absolute brilliance. And I'd probably put the third one up there as maybe Raiders.
Yeah,
got to throw a Spielberg. I mean, how cool is that? What a cool. It's such a good movie. And all these films hold up, by the way. Like you can keep watching them now and they're still great. Still great.
I'm waiting for the moment that I give my daughters Back to the Future. I'm waiting for them to I'm waiting a minute just so they understand it and they appreciate it. So I just got them through 3 seasons of Stranger Things.
Oh, there you go.
And they were like, hey, what is that movie that they're walking out of? I'm like, that's Back to the Future. They're like, can we watch that? I'm like, soon.
21 gigawatts.
And where can people find out more about you and the work you're doing, brother?
Yeah. So, I got my website, which is jasonsatterlund.com. I'm also on the old IG at the same place, Jason Satterlund, and on YouTube, Jason Satterlund. If you just look me up on YouTube, you'll find me. I am here.
Jason, man, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to another film geek and elder statesman of the indie film space. Hey, contemporary, sir. I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for the knowledge bombs you dropped, and hopefully this has helped a filmmaker avoid a couple of pieces of shrapnel that's going to come their way. But I appreciate you, brother. Continued success, my friend.
Thank you.